Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. Longtime homeowners in all but 2 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties face the same problem. Property tax bills that rise every year, often beyond what they can afford. Joining me with more on this story is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, how are lawmakers looking to address this problem?
Lawmakers want to expand something called the Longtime Owner-Occupant Program, which is actually available to Philadelphia County and the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. It's a program that provides exemptions or defers tax increases for property owners who have lived in their houses for at least 10 years. And it limits the assessments, or essentially locks in the amount they are paying to between 50 and 75% of the previous value. As a lot of homeowners probably know, over the last couple of years, property values have skyrocketed, and as such, the property taxes that go along with them have gotten very expensive. So you can imagine if you bought a home 10 or more years ago, how much more it is worth now and how those property taxes could really climb out of the range of affordability, especially for seniors and other people who live on fixed incomes. This is something that has made the most sense in very urban areas like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, where gentrification is rapidly happening across the city. So lawmakers have already recognized that it's a beneficial program for those areas. At the same time, everyone else across the state struggles with property taxes too. This isn't something that is just limited to cities. People lived on fixed incomes all over the state. People have, economic concerns all over the state. A lot of people are middle class. They're working just to get by. And a slowly rising tax bill, or as in the last couple of years, rapidly rising tax bills, they're a problem for people who need to eat and pay gas and pay utilities, and everything else is more expensive. So lawmakers want to make this happen for the rest of the counties. Doing so, however, is going to take something called a constitutional amendment, which is not a quick process. It's at minimum 2 years, but it would likely, in the case of this specific effort, would be 4 years. And what that means is the Senate and the House would have to pass a constitutional amendment that would change the Constitution to make this program accessible in all 67 counties. And if they did that in this session, they would have to go again in the next 2-year session and do the same thing, pass it. And then voters get to vote on it in an election after that and say whether they want to do this or not. So we're looking at a couple of years of effort here, because the legislative session ends on November 30th, and then it starts over. The clock starts over again for another 2 years. And this effort has only gotten through the House. So the Senate would have to take it up within the next, few days here, since they only have a couple days left of legislative session, really, because they're off so much, particularly around the election. So the idea that this vote is going to sail through the legislature in time for November 30th so that they could act on it again next year in the next session, that seems more of a long shot, especially given that there was a lot of criticism in the House for it. Now, they did ultimately support it because it's a constitutional amendment, but there's no indication from the Senate as to when they're going to take this up.
What sorts of criticism did this bill face?
So for Republicans mostly, they think that the act is too little too late. They've been pushing for this expansion of this program for years, and particularly there was a bill much earlier in the year that would have done it, that would have created a constitutional amendment that would have basically taken us through the same process, but had plenty of time to go through both chambers of the legislature and actually clear that one hurdle of passing in a legislative session. But now, the way that Democrats have introduced it, because they do control the calendar in the House right now, because they are the majority, this way, they've really not given it enough time or hope of getting through in this session. So to critics, it feels like a political stunt, like something that they're just doing for the votes. We're a couple days out from an election, and they think that Democrats want to be able to go out and say, look, we voted for property tax reductions. Some critics have gone as far to say as not only is it a political stunt, but that Democrats actually like the property taxes. They have no interest in reducing them. That could be a little bit of a strange statement. I would argue that I think everybody wants to pay lower property taxes, no matter who they are, even if they're an elected official. But that is still the farthest of the criticism, is that they have no intention of actually doing this, and have given the chance next year to bring up the vote that they wouldn't do it. So that's something that is weighing on their minds. Now, supporters of the bill, the House Democrats in general, really refute this claim. They think that that's just playing politics, and said that, there's other ways to introduce property tax relief that Republicans have blocked, such as changing the school funding formula. In Pennsylvania, property taxes and their constant rise are inextricably linked to school funding. There's long been an argument that the state isn't pitching in enough and that they're relying too much on local property taxes to do it. Although the state has increased their funding by billions of dollars over the last decade, and school reserves have also climbed. So it's a lot more complicated than, let's revise the funding formula and we'll lower property taxes. That's not exactly what's happened either. So in both cases, the sides are kind of playing fast and loose with the direct facts, but at the end of the day, they both do agree that property tax reductions should happen. It's just, is this coming in the immediate future for residents? No, it's not.
Well, Kristen, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.